whether you might, wherever you might be in, I should have tried to do that in a more proper way, shouldn't I? Considering we are allegedly inviting the good folks of Facebook for the first time ever. If it's your first time here, welcome. If you are here, Facebook, yeah, the Book of the Face. It's only me and him at the minute.
Mark. G'day, Mark. Mr. Zuckerberg, how are you?
Mark, yeah.
I'm sure he's watching.
Will he be watching? Does he have to watch?
Yeah, you'll take a personal interest, I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he will. I'm sure. Well, he hasn't anymore, has he? Now that his drone interests have gone, he's probably nothing to do with it at all. Didn't they scrap that project? Didn't they? That big wing? I think they did.
Yeah, I think so. So we're going to get Jeff Bezos on here. We're going to go on Amazon Prime as well as Facebook.
Yeah, must be. Yeah, that must be what's going to happen. I'm sure Jeff will be along just now. Ian will be along in a minute. But let's before Ian joins us, because he's running late or whatever he's doing. Australia, they're holding back, I believe.
Yes, according to an ABC News bulletin that was published last week, a cUAS spokesman said that the registration of recreational drones probably won't be until 2022, which is like it was supposed to be next month, I think, or maybe even last month. I can't remember, but they've pushed it out 3 years at least. So I guess it's all too hard for them. They've realised, hopefully, that the one glimmer of hope is that by the time 2022 rolls around, they'll realise that it's just a complete and utter waste of time anyway. So they'll just abandon the whole thing for recreational users.
Yeah, and good day to Above and Beyond and UAV Shed. I watched your video there earlier, Above and Beyond. So I've seen what roads look like around you and your music choices. So I looked at that earlier, and I don't like one of the things. So in this dual StreamYard thing, which they very kindly let us use, which is going out to YouTube and Facebook at the same time. Unfortunately, it doubles up the comments. I notice if we comment, of course it does, because it's sending them to both.
Does it? Really?
Yeah,
really?
You see the one says face. Yeah. Why did I fall for that? It's interesting that CASA has delayed what they're doing, as has the UK. And I should really wait for Ian to start talking about this, but of course, the UK had a little issue with email addresses, and the Civil Aviation Authority actually was phished. And I believe, or I've been led to believe, that an email went out to at least 400 email addresses containing nefarious links and means. And that's pretty shocking, happening with an organisation that has just spent 4.1 million Earth pounds on setting up a registration scheme.
So when you say they were phished, was it just an email was sent out using their email address or something?
No, I don't know if I'm being correct with my terms. Ian will be better when he comes along in a minute. But basically, the CAA sent out an email with something embedded in it that pulled data on people, invited people to go to other places that weren't the CAA. So
someone didn't just spoof the CAA email address. I mean, it's pretty easy to spoof an email address of the sender. In which case CAA would have not been at all culpable, because I could spoof your email address and it's not your fault. It's just the way the email system has been so badly created.
Yeah, let me see if I can use this program properly. There we are, this one. So what did the CAA say to this? They said that, unfortunately, the CAA has been the victim of a sophisticated phishing attack, resulting in a small number of emails, 400, being sent to external parties. We have taken steps to prevent this issue continuing, including notification to the National Cyber Security Centre. So yeah, that's that's what happened. I mean, let's hope that they don't have any issues with their registration. UAV Shed is mentioning, yes, I've put that in the news. Let's share that as well. It's all a bit
so do you think the CAA will solve the problem by putting up a big sign on the website that says no phishing?
Yes.
It's a bureaucrat solution.
Yeah, that's also something I should have. So yes, the AMA need your assistance in an urgent matter. Last week, the FAA unexpectedly informed us that, contrary to earlier commitments to the AMA, the agency is planning to limit all recreational model aircraft operations to 400 feet in controlled airspace, with no exceptions. And it's going to be everywhere, actually. uncontrolled. So it's actually 400 feet everywhere.
So there goes
And
thermal thawing and large models and all the other things that need more altitude. It's that, yeah, maybe they were watching my video and thought, the Simpsons onto something, we'll just limit everyone to 400 feet. But I did say, unless you get special permission. In New Zealand, it's 400 feet, but you can get an exemption on a per site or on a per event basis by applying to CAA, and then they'll let you issue a NOTAM. So it's not a hard ceiling, it's just, what would you call it, a bouncy ceiling, and you can exceed it if you make arrangements. But it sounds like in the USA, it's going to be, that's it. Sorry, you guys, put your gliders away or just learn to fly low.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt Lawrence, thank you very much for proving that Facebook is working. Our first Facebook comment on one of these videos. So that's fantastic. Yeah, someone clicked the link and clicked here. The prince. Yeah, I know. And there are lots of memes popped up. Of course, oh, here's Ian. I better let him in. Ian, we've been talking about you, and I can tell you it wasn't good.
Oh, God, what have I done?
Well, we've blamed so far. What we've done is we've blamed the UK CIA phishing attack on you.
Yeah.
And we believe that you're also responsible for issues with the FAA and the AMA in America.
100% agree with all of these things. I have all of that power and influence at any one time.
That's what I thought. And this seems to be working to Facebook, which is amazing.
Yes. Hello, Facebook world. We are live on Facebook.
All 6 or 7 of you that might be watching from there. So, Ian, what was your maybe one, which is Matt Lawrence? What was your take on the phishing attack? First of all,
That's a weird one, because the question mark is, I didn't get it, and I'm registered. I'm a PFCO, so I don't know where this data's come from. But some did, and some people who are no longer PFCOs as well. I'm assuming this is the CAA one. Yes. Yeah. It's weird. I haven't got it. I double checked my spam boxes and all the usual ones as well. It's come at very bad timing for them, that's for sure. Clearly someone's opened something they shouldn't have. That's because they've openly admitted that, basically, haven't they, that it did come from them. But it's so easy to do now. This is the problem. It's so
that's
easy.
True.
It just takes a run. I've had an email today myself from company saying, for my, I get the Apple account ones every day. If anyone uses an iPhone and you're registered on Apple, I don't know how they do this, but I get this fake iTunes one every single day.
It's random, because I get them too, and I don't have an iPhone.
So it is random. Yeah. So there must be billions of those emails going out on a daily basis. It's incredible, isn't it? But the CAA one is concerning, because at the end of the day, it makes you wonder if they've had access to that, their system has been compromised. At the end of the day, whichever way it's done, they've been compromised.
Yeah, I think before people register, they should ask for an ironclad guarantee with compensation in the event that that database is compromised. It's reasonable. It's a business arrangement. If you're going to want me to trust you, I have to be able to trust you. And if you say I can trust you, put your money where your mouth is. Give everyone on that database £1,000 if it's breached.
Yeah, well, they're going to be subject to GDPR, and the EU doesn't mess around. That's the one thing with these things. We've had heavily adjusted laws in the last 12 months alone.
Have they cancelled Brexit? Is Brexit over?
Oh God, I don't even know where Brexit is right now. What's the news saying now? I think it's on for the 31st. But place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. But no, it's concerning. But I didn't get it myself. I believe the other Ian didn't he, Gary? Did Ian?
He did.
Yeah.
And some other people I know got it, and one person had that I know had 400, count them, 400 email addresses in the clear on it. Ooh. So it says it went to at least, one of them went to at least 400 people.
Wow.
And I actually didn't want to know who those 400 people were, because I don't want to get involved in this at all. I don't want to know.
It is also interesting, though, that I actually wasn't getting some CAA notification emails as well at one point, and I am now. I made a complaint about it when they made a change to the PFCO rules last year, when they removed the need for the night ops was reduced. It wasn't necessary for you to go through heavy amounts of scrutiny. They made it easier to do. They removed the 7 kilo category as well. I didn't actually get the email for that one, and I kicked off, but I have been getting all of the emails now. But who knows? Perhaps it's an early database. Perhaps. Who knows?
Just running a few tests with the database. Let's see what happens. Who are these people we've got from way back?
Yeah. It is concerning, and at the end of the day, I would hope, as a public organisation that they are, at the end of the day, they work for us. They certainly work for us PFCOs. At the end of the day, we're paying them money. That's the way I look at it. Perhaps they don't look at it that way, but an explanation would be good of exactly what happened.
It's not a good look, is it?
No.
It's not a good look at all. I'm going to put up another Chrome tab here. There's probably a clever way of doing this that doesn't look so ham-fisted on my part as I do it. But this sort of caught my eye. BT, for those of you not in the UK, that's British Telecom. That's a UK telephone provider, the main one. I don't quite know how many there are over there now, but
yes,
yeah, it's basically the main one, and they've jumped into bed with Drone Shield, and they're offering cUAS solutions. But I have to wonder, and what I wonder about is who you're going to call. Ghostbusters, if they detect something, what rights do they have to call anybody? I suppose it's like being a CCTV operator, but on a grander scale. But are the police going to respond, and can they pinpoint who the person really is? I don't know.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this? It just didn't sit well with me.
I don't know. For me, as you say, the big question mark is, okay, they detect a drone. Where is it? Where's the operator? Is he flying illegally? There's nothing to say he's doing anything illegal just because they detect it. If they're shoving it on top of stadiums, they're going to be picking up stuff left, right, and centre. The next situation is, if BT have a long history of doing stupid things and getting into silly industries they got no place in. They've done it for donkey's years. They did it way back when they got into satellite TV. They then got out of satellite TV, and then they ended up back into TV, is which they're in now. BT have so many facets. I once heard a story about BT that a friend of mine went to do an audit on a depot involved with an external company, and they live in their own world. They don't have anything to, there's a guy at a desk doing something. How long have you been doing that? 8 years. Why? Because I was told to do it 8 years ago. No one told him he retired. He
still fighting the war.
He was still fighting the war, and BT is, they've been broken up again recently between the OpenReach side of it from the infrastructure, so their infrastructure side. So is this actually BT or is it OpenReach? Because OpenReach handle the infrastructure, but they don't really handle much retail. I don't see what benefit is in this for BT, let alone anyone else. It's a weird one to get into, isn't it? It really is.
Look how much they were looking at spending at Gatwick, millions of pounds on or drone detection technology. So it's money. It's money is the bottom line. That's the driver. But the question you have to ask yourself is, how are they detecting these drones? Are they just listening on 5.8 and 2.4 gigahertz for something that sounds like a drone? Or have they actually cracked the DJI uplink, downlink, so they can then get the GPS coordinates back? Because it says they can identify where the drone is, what the height is. How do you tell what the altitude is unless you can actually break into the data stream? And also, what if it's a drone that it isn't a DJI drone? What if it's a mini quad or something else, something like that? They're making a lot of really bold claims for the system, which without things like actual triangulation with radar and things, you just can't do it. And even with radar, drones are operating in a very cluttered piece of the airspace. There's a lot of ground clutter, a lot of multipathing. It's really hard to get good radar signals in an environment like that, and even getting good. So what is it, 5 kilometers away? If someone's got a drone hovering at eye height 5 kilometers away, you ain't going to hear that in a built-up area. I would say someone needs to take them to task and say, look, prove this thing works. Otherwise, why would anyone spend millions and millions of pounds on it, which is what obviously they're going to be asking for. And by the way, you say about people, living in the past. I got a copy of their latest stationery invoice, and there's a whole lot of carbon paper on there. What's that stuff? Carbon paper.
It's weird that BT specifically have got into this one, and Bruce makes an interesting point here. Let's look at the technologies. Okay, DJI all their systems are encrypted links. There is Aeroscope, okay, or the drone ID, which DJI have, that their aircraft hand out some info, but that still isn't open. That is not an open source specification. It is a proprietary secondary set of packet data that is transmitted on the same band as the transmitter. If you then look at everyone else who's mostly using Wi-Fi, enhanced Wi-Fi, they're not instantly hackable. We can't just hack a Wi-Fi link in 1 second. You know, even if you wanted to hack a Wi-Fi link, you've got to sit there for hours to decrypt the data and eventually get past the public keys. So as Bruce says, what are they picking up here? If they're picking up raw data, a raw signal, well, Wi-Fi is OFDM. That could literally be anything. They're going to be looking at every individual house's Wi-Fi signal. Is it, you know, I'd really be interested to try this with a really old transmitter and strap a phone to the bottom of it with the Wi-Fi hotspot turned on and see if they pick it up and see, you know, what are they looking at here? Because I honestly think most of this is snake oil. I still think all of this counter UAS is complete and utter bollocks. That's me being polite.
I think we need to go back to 35 megahertz for our drones, and that'll stuff them up. Imagine flying around, they don't even detect us there. That'd make them look silly.
Yeah.
But surely, look, I've got a box of wires here. If I just paint this box of wires and put some LEDs on the outside and a couple of switches, surely we could sell this for a fortune.
Hang on,
surely.
hang on. If you were in the UK, the cops would be beating your door down now because you've got wires in a box, and that's a terrorist device.
But I made this for peaceful purposes. How very dare you?
Doesn't matter. It can be used to I don't know, strangle mice or something. It's still a dangerous device.
It's you know, technically, look, if let's unpack anti-drone solutions, right? You're either detecting the radio signal raw, so pretty much all radio systems are OFDM based. DJI's Lightbridge and OcuSync is OFDM. Wi-Fi in itself is OFDM. About the only system that isn't is HearLink, which is LTE, LTE over Wi-Fi. So it's a slightly different packet setup. But again, these are very easy to spot. Nice big OFDM mask, but it's not going to tell them anything. It's just going to say direction there. If they're going to be decrypting the links, then that means they've hacked them. The only system that's official is Aeroscope by DJI. There is nothing else, but that again is only DJI. It doesn't matter if you're using an AFI, a H+, none of those systems have any form of ID, and their links are encrypted as well. So all of this info that they say, oh, we're going to detect, they're going to detect a radio source in the sky. That is what they're going to detect at that point. What that radio source is could be anything at that point. And I think the info to it is just next to useless. At the end of the day, it could be a bird with a transmitter strapped to the bottom of it. That's another one. Let's strap a 2.4 gig transmitter to a pigeon.
And what are they're detecting, but what are they protecting against? I mean, I'm still struggling to see the bodies in the amassed piles of wrecked aircraft. What is the threat? You know, someone flies a drone in a park. Where is the threat to anybody? They still haven't done the risk analysis. They still don't have the risk profiles for these operations. They're still basically basing all their decisions on the Daily Mail stories.
Yeah. And the other thing, you know, and we've said this more than once, it is illegal in the UK to block any form of radio transmission. So any of them that say they can take control is nonsense, or they're breaking the law. Because my understanding is no one has been officially handed a license to do that yet. There's been tests, but no one commercially can do that. Yeah. And even if you do that, you do not take control of the drone. Pretty much every current model of drone behaves exactly the same. If you jam the radio signal, it will enter return to home. The only option you've got then is if you want it to land on the spot, you block GPS, which is L1 and L2, and then it will land on the spot. There's no command and control with any of this. There's no replication of the control signal. You're either telling it to go home or you're telling it to land on the spot. So when they're saying, oh, they have a counter-drone solution that can take control or do this, it's nonsense. Most of it is utter nonsense.
But they could use lasers. Oh, hang on a minute. You're not allowed lasers with more than 5 milliwatts, so you're buggered there too.
Yeah, there is the interest. You know, that drone that's been seen this week. I can't remember the name of it. I was a bit late getting in. That picks the cube-based one. You know, I saw that and I thought...
pile driver drone that knocks them out of the sky.
The pile driver. I think for the first time I thought that's genuinely interesting. You know, that's an interesting route of going for it. I don't say I particularly like it, but it's definitely an interesting route of doing it.
But I mooted that solution at the Heathrow thing, at the Gatwick thing, saying, well, why don't they get some people with mini quads up there and they can knock any drone out of the sky in a matter of seconds? And you hire someone. I mean, they hire people now to go around and shoot at birds and make noise to keep the birds away. Why not give them a mini quad in the backpack? And then if there's any drones, you can get it out of the sky pretty damn quick, and it's pretty cheap, and you can use the mini quad again because they don't break easily. It's a simple solution to a complex problem that would cost hundreds of pounds, not millions of pounds.
Well, yes. There are. One of the big use cases is prisons stop stuff being dropped into prisons, and as the other Ian will tell you, the biggest way of getting stuff into prisons is actually prison warders. It's not drones. It's all logical stuff, isn't it?
There was a guy commented on one of my videos when I mentioned that, dropping contraband to prisons wasn't a big issue, and he said he was an ex-prison guard or something, and that, that it was an issue. And so I just pointed to a link that said there were hundreds of prison officers convicted of carrying contraband into prisons, in recent years. And how many drone incidents have there been? Yeah, sure, people do use drones to drop stuff into prisons occasionally, but it's not the big problem. It's not the big problem at all.
Yeah, Sky Train saying that they can, I don't know if you saw that comment, and they can detect RF, but if you do not pump out an RF signal, they can't detect you, which is, go Wiggle. Yeah, I use Wiggle. I do that. Oh, no, I don't. I didn't say that. Ian does.
There's a lot of, we're still in the very early days of all of this, and there's so much. The problem is right now there's pretty much unlimited money on the table for anyone who can sort of say, yeah, we can protect you, whether it be private residents. I know there are footballers. You've got a lot of people with a fair amount of wealth who have been whipped up into a storm over the whole drone thing, and they're all sitting there saying we want counter drone solutions on our homes, and there are companies selling those solutions.
Very well. Well, that's where we're making a mistake. I give you Exhibit A, my box of wires. Yeah. That's what we should be doing as well.
I see a Kickstarter coming up here. Let's have the cUAS News Kickstarter anti-drone technology for your own house. Yeah, I'm sure we could do
that.
Yeah. Actually, what I'll do is I've out in the shed, I've actually got anti-drone paint, and I'll be selling the anti-drone paint for your house. It'll make it virtually radar invisible. It's clear, and the tin's very, very light. And when you paint it on, it won't feel like you're doing anything at all. But of course, that's its cloaking properties. It just come into the fore.
Made by Emperor Clothes Incorporated.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. Empire Inc., as we like to call it here in the Empire Group.
I think on BT, I think it'll be a flash in the pan. It's a way of them selling someone something for a few million quid, and then someone's going to have to dial 150, go through to a call center, wait 20 minutes for them to answer, and then be put through to someone who has nothing to do with why they actually phoned in the first place. And then after about an hour, they'll get through to the person they need to speak to about the drone that they've allegedly detected.
So it's just like reporting a stabbing then?
Yeah.
I feel that I've put the logo up there to encroach on Bruce, because sometimes it's better. No, I can get rid of it. Let's see if I can get rid of it. Let's see if I can get rid of it. You're absolutely right.
I like my new hat. It's great.
Yeah. Well, actually, the only other choice is to show their logo. So it's I've got to make it clear, haven't I? That's what I'll do. I'll make it clear, and then it won't quite be there. Or not as bad. What was I going to say? I don't know what I was going to say. I was going to say it's a worry that people make claims about. Because I was just thinking, he was talking in the sort of triangulation of, you're right. If you've got the antenna up on a big high roof, it's got its beam. Well, what in effect, what altitude would it be able to see at 5 kilometers range? Curve of the Earth's beginning to come into that.
You're going to pull a hell of a lot of stuff in at that point, isn't you?
Yeah, as you say,
with Well, the big thing is you don't need to, or you don't want to detect drones on large, flat, open areas of grassland because they're not a problem. It's going to be urban environments where you've got all sorts of other stuff. It's just like lunacy. These people obviously have not even thought it through. Someone's come up with the idea and they just said, well, let's do it because we need to be at the cutting edge of technology and showing our shareholders that we're prepared to make a lot of money out of idiots.
Yeah, this will be that box that they've paid loads of money for, and it'll get turned on, and they'll assume it's all working, and they'll all sit there and feel safe. It reminds me actually of the episode of the It Crowd, which was a show in the UK, the day they brought the internet into the office.
Yes,
a
Jen
little
has the
box, and they just had the internet in the office.
This is the internet, Jen. Don't drop the internet. Yes,
and it just reminds me, this is the solution to every problem. This box, it'll be in a corner, and it will just sit there, and no one will be allowed to touch it. But it's protecting them. Don't doubt it.
Yeah.
It's protecting them.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. I was trying to think of a good analogy, but you nailed it then. What else have I got on my list here? Because it's a big day today. So we've done the AMA. Oh, let's go back to the AMA thing. 400 feet. Now, who's pushing for that? Is this our drone delivery chums yet again?
It sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. But speaking to the registration in the UK and in Australia, I'm wondering whether the regulators aren't backing off because they realise that compliance will be incredibly low at this point of events, and it's going to make them look really stupid to have spent all this money on a system that nobody is going to sign up for. And especially in both Australia and the UK, I think they may be suddenly getting the vibe coming from the community, who overwhelmingly on social media have said we're not going to subscribe. We're not going to join this registration system, and especially with BMFA saying, well, don't sign up. I think that they stand to be on a hiding to nothing and made to look very, very stupid in a very short space of time.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a beginning to see a realization of that. Okay, there's been a lot of it's politics. There's no other word. It's complete and utter politics that have no ground in fact or reality. And there's been a slight change in government in the UK, which has resulted in a whole new minister and things like that. I think if they all take a stand back and look at the Gatwick situation, they've been made to look like idiots, and no one wants to be made to look like idiots. And I think that's the simple reality. And it could be beginning to set in that perhaps this isn't a bigger problem as originally thought.
As we know, dear old. Well, first I'm going to say, is that really the feeling you get over there? Do you think the general public think it's gone away, or are you just being hopeful because you're in the industry?
General public never had an issue. The general public never had a problem. If you grab someone in the house in the middle of nowhere and I say to them, what scares you about drones? They'll always turn around and say, watching me in my garden. Why? Because that's what the media has told them to look for. It's stranger danger. It's been pushed into them by the BBC, by all of the other channels. Do we say to them, are you worried about the guy with the 600mm lens on the A7 III who's hiding in that hedge? No, because they didn't know about it. No one's told them about it. But
it's funny how you know where to hide in a hedge on the A73 though. That was very, very specific. And you even need the lens size. But anyway, yes.
But moving off my weekend habits. But yeah, the reason people are fearful of drones is because that's what they've been told to be fearful of. If you say to someone, cool, wouldn't it be cool if you saw 3 red cars? The chances are they'll see 3 red cars, because that's how we condition the general populace. You tell them what you want them to see, and then they see it or they fear it. And that's what the media has done for the last 2 years. But when you get situations like Gatwick, well, in the end, you turn around and say, well, hold on a minute, there's been no evidence. Most people will look back and go, yeah, there's something not right about that, isn't there? And I've spoken to quite a few people, and they are, I always get the same comment, were you at Gatwick last week, or whatever it was when it was. But the more I've spoken about people now, they've all got to go, yeah, that's become a bit of a mess, isn't it? Because it is, and it's a public mess now.
I'm on my thinking head's not on. We're coming up to the 1 year or 2 year anniversary. 1 year, isn't it?
It's got to be 1 year, isn't it? It was just before Christmas. It's November.
Well, wasn't it? We ought to have some sort of event. Maybe we could have it near an airport.
We could stream live from our aircraft near Gatwick.
And it's interesting how, even though we discovered it was 800 or whatever £1,000 it was, all the several newspapers I saw were quoting £600,000 or £700,000 for the cost of it. So even that's not got out correctly. And
Underplaying
yeah,
the whole thing.
Yeah, and Blue Flyers talking about in the comments, if you've been following along, that he was down at maybe down at Bude, maybe the former RAF San Athan. No, San Morgan. Sorry, not San Athan. Flying a 146 into there, and saw a Phantom from above that the crew didn't see. I guess they were busy. But I flew on earlier on. San Morgan. That was a great place back in the day. Sky Eye Train's probably been to another ex-RAF base, Lambeda. Oh, there we are. Mood lighting time. I wonder what that's about. Anyway, moving on.
And Ian has chewed through the power cable again.
The government are outside him.
They already. They found out about your box. Yeah. What was I going to say? I don't know. What was I going to say? Seeing fantastic systems at Lambeda. Well, I was lucky enough to fly a few times in Nimrod's out of St. Morgan many years ago, and they had fantastic systems that were passive systems that listened out for the RF footprint of things. In this case, ships and submarines, and you could identify what a thing was from the electrical noise it made, not just its radios talking over and over, but it's wiring, how all the wiring in the ship.
My friend of mine was a sonar op on the Nimrods as well, MR2s, and he could tell me dark and scary things about flying around the Atlantic chasing subs. Look, there are systems out there that can hack into all of the control links. We're not going to say there isn't, but the reality is, from the retail counter drone solution point of view, because you've got to take into account there are two aspects to counter drone. You've got the military and you've got retail, and retail is everyone who is trying to sell everyone else a counter drone solution, and you've got these companies tripping over themselves to say to people and businesses, we can protect you, and the reality is they're not.
Yes, and James is wondering where Boris is. I'm going to drop James a link because I've just thought of something else that he might like to tell us about. Maybe if he's not had too much to drink yet, of course. That would be the
yeah, he's normally on the bottle by 6 o'clock at night. By now, he's normally leathered.
Exactly. So talk amongst yourselves.
Tell you what was interesting. Did you see the article today pushed out by? Let me just find it because it's exited my brain. By UAVionics.
Yes.
About
why Bluetooth's no good.
Bluetooth's bad, but really why they're pushing towards UDSB rather than ADSB in the drone industry, which is it's a really interesting article. I'll put a link to it in the comments because it's
hang on a minute. All right, yes, we've got it here. We've got it here. Hang on a minute. I'll put it in as well. Here it is. And Christian from UAVionics is going to come and talk to us about it because it would be a really good, a really good topic for us. But not tonight, Josephine. He's busy tonight, and it is yet again. In fact, let's share the screen. It's something that we have spoken about in the past, and that is largely protected spectrum, and that is the reason why. In that, if you do stuff on Bluetooth, which is 2.4, you're playing with everybody else. And to be very honest, though, ASTM, have they actually promulgated any standards that anyone's actually using? I don't think they have. So there it is. It's on the news. I'll put the link in there, and it's a very interesting subject.
It is, and there's a lot. To be fair to them, it's a really well written article, and it makes a lot of sense. What they're saying about the ISM bands and the issues around the ISM bands, especially. They're talking about having a dedicated drone system similar to ADSB. That way, it can be picked up by ADSB as well if they keep the frequencies close, but also be able to keep us on our own in our own area rather than mix us up with all the other traffic as well.
Yeah, and on the back of it, they've received, as you can see in this, if you click through the link from the article, they've received permission to test this UDSB, and they will admit to you that they think, well, it's a title. It might not be what the eventual title is. But yeah, it's got to be something like this. I know this has been in the pipeline for several months, in fact, maybe even a year or more. And yeah, we'll get Christian's going to come on and tell us all about it.
It would be good because, you know, if we look at Europe, we're in the middle of an ADSB rollout. That's the reality. You know, the Cube has started it. DJI announced it before everyone else, but the Cube with the ADSB carry board is the first all-in-one product on the market with ADSB.
There he is.
Ah, there he is. Hey, James.
ADSB, and let's see what bottle he uses tonight, shall we?
Who are you sponsored by tonight, James?
I don't know. Take a pick. If someone gives me some money, then them.
Jameson.
Well, the lighting isn't. Well, that money is. I don't know if you saw that. I forgot to mention and put in our comments. High.
A blast from the past.
Don't high tech make like those really awful trainers?
Different high tech.
Oh, okay.
I got no gear, but no, it's a really interesting idea. Yeah, it'd be good if you get them on.
What happens if you line them up in the southern hemisphere?
Yeah.
What happens?
I want to talk to Bruce about radios later as well.
Oh, I see. There's been a lot of shilling on the radio front, hasn't there, in this last week? I believe
an awful lot of shilling on the radio front. And are we talking about jumper?
We're not talking about old money either, are we?
No.
No, yes, I've noticed that.
Yes.
But before that, the reason I sort of nagged James to come on was, James, it's 125 million quid from the UK government.com. What's that all about then?
Well, it's not enough, really. I think they're being a bit tight, really. No, I basically Future Flight is coming out, and so it's on. I can't remember what website is it. Well, I think it's connected to. Isn't this one's not Innovate UK? It's a slightly different one. I forget what the name of the organization is, but yeah, 125 million. They're plowing into stuff. You can sign up if you just search for Future Flight. I think Gary, you put out a video, didn't you, the other day?
I did put out the stuff about it, and I shared their video. Yes, and they had their big talking heads thing, which was interesting. But one of my sort of instant worry with it was they're like 4 or 5 years out for the actual testing of these ideas and things. It's like, might be a bit slow in this game.
Well, you know, a lot of these kind of competitions, I tend to find that they don't really favour the true innovators in the market. And one thing actually put in the consultation recently, the drone strategy, or what was it, the aviation strategy 2020 or whatever it was, 2050, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I went and put some comments in there talking about, you know, there needs to be more opportunities for small companies to go and get to you know, MVP stage, because at the moment trying to create a proof of concept product, if you've got no capital, it's really hard to find enough money and to create a product out of thin air. You know, once you've got yourself going, then in come the venture capitalists and angel investors to get you to that next sort of stage. But going from, you know, idea to proof of concept or minimum viable product, that's the really hard stage. And we need more opportunities for, you know, for intelligent thought leaders to be able to come up with these kinds of opportunities. But there is something which came out the other day, which was circulated, called T-Trig. I don't know if you come across that one.
Didn't see that one, no.
So
tell us.
Yeah, so Department of Transport have basically put out a fund. It's only about £1 million, but I guarantee you it will probably create more wealth for the country than the 125 million will. It's £1 million. It's split up into £30,000 prize pools, and it's directly for people with ideas to turn them into proof of concepts or minimum viable products. And there's 4 categories. There's 3 or 4 categories. There's an open category, and then there's 2 or 3 other categories which are more specific. I think it's brilliant, like absolutely brilliant. Like that kind of competition is what we need more of. And if we can get more, more like that, it just helps the ideas come to fruition. I think they said that last time they did it, they got 5 to 1 on their investment. So they basically put in for every pound they put in, those businesses then got a further £5 worth of investment on average from the private industry. So yeah, I think it's brilliant. And but going back to Future Flight, yeah, we'll wait and see.
I hope it's better run. We had that kind of thing here in New Zealand called technology grants to help people with ideas get them to the first stage of investment. And I actually applied and successfully received a $36,000 technology grant. But it was just the most poorly administrated scheme I've ever seen. Now, when you're in that first phase of taking an idea from concept to actually some kind of physical form, one of your most valuable assets is your time. And so I got this $36,000, which I could uplift. But in order to uplift it, I had to produce a business plan which detailed the next 2 years of development of this product. And when you're talking blue sky development, you've got an idea. You don't know which way it's going to go until you've done a lot of the development work. It's constantly, you're reevaluating the path you're going to take to reach your goal. And they said every time you change your plan, you must resubmit the entire plan. And then you can't buy any capital, plant, or equipment or stock. You've got to actually hire people to do everything for you because we want this money to go around. So whereas I could perhaps spend an hour to make a part on my own workshop, I wasn't allowed to buy in the materials to build that part or buy in a piece of machinery to make that part. I had to actually take it out to someone else who would do it for me, and they would take a week and charge me 10 times what it would cost me to do it myself. It was just such a dog's breakfast that I told them they could keep their $36,000 where the sun doesn't shine, and I just do it on my own. And it's been my experience as a serial entrepreneur that at that early stage of thing, money isn't really the issue. It's not really money that holds people back. It is because most people who have the idea also have the ability to turn it into at least in some kind of early prototype. And so what you have is sweat equity. That's the most valuable thing you have. And the sooner you start taking on board development capital, venture capitalists or seed or angel capital, the less you're going to get out of it in the long term. Because when you start up, if you have say you turn your idea into a company with 1,000 shares, each share is worth like 1 cent because nothing's been proven. Then when you get it to like the first prototype stage, the value of those shares might go up to say $1. And so if you take on capital or venture investment at that stage, you're selling your shares for effectively $1 a share. Now, if you are able to mortgage the children, put the wife out on the street or something in order to get the money yourself, then you take it to the investment community. Once you've got something a little more firm, those shares might be worth $100 or $1,000 each. So if you're going to sell down half your shareholding for $1 a share, you're giving away a huge amount of the future of the company. You're better to wait till when you really need it, and you've got the most to show people, which is also easy to convince them to part with their dollars. And then you can sell down a much smaller share of the company for a much larger amount of money, and you come out of it a lot better off, and you retain control. And you're not in a situation where, despite people signing NDAs, you've got too many people knowing about exactly what you're doing. So as a serial entrepreneur, I say, too many people think, oh, I've got a great idea. I'll go and get some funding and turn it into a reality. No, that's the very last step of the whole process. First thing is work on it quietly, silently, under the radar until you've got something that you can get a really good investment deal on. And you can prove to people, hey, this works. It just needs polish. It just needs commercialization. So yeah, too many people just think the life of an entrepreneur is you come up with an idea, investors throw lots of money at it, you drive around in a Porsche while someone else builds it. No, it doesn't work that way.
Doesn't it? Oh no! Have you been following my latest venture on Twitter? There, I've created renders, and Andrew knows that. He's mentioned that in the comments. I've created renders of my urban air mobility vehicle because I believe all you actually have to do is create a render. And Andrew's mentioned that I also now need to create some sort of video. And in the video, I think my urban air mobility vehicle will, I don't know, rescue a child, put out a fire. I don't know, do something like that. And then I'm just going to sit back and wait for the money to come in, haven't I? Surely that's all I've got to do.
I think that I completely understand where you're coming from there, Bruce, with regards to being able to start things up and doing it organically, and I completely agree with you. I think it depends on the type of business you're trying to start. I think there's certain types of business where you can go down that route of organic growth and you can develop it in your own time. But there are other types of business, say software or something like that, where you might need to bring in some people to do some coding for you. You might not have those skill sets in terms of turning something into code, but you might have the perfect idea and perfect plan as to how to commercialize an idea. So I think it depends on the individual, and it depends on the type of business you're trying to create. Some types of business require quite a lot of capital. And the only way to do that is to build up a huge amount of capital in the first place. So I kind of get where you're coming from, but it's not always such black and white, I think.
Yeah, I found even with software and coding, things like that, one of the best ways to get, as I say, it's all down to sweat equity. At the beginning, it's all about hours and time, especially like in software. And I have had ventures where I have brought programmers in for a percentage of the company. And so they're really keen to work, and they work really hard because they know the harder they work, the more that percentage is going to be worth further down the track. That incentivizes them. It means you don't have to pay them. You don't need the cash up front because they're going to take it out the back end. And because the success is dependent on their efforts, they work really hard. There are many, many ways to get around this lack of capital. And the reason I know that is because I live in a country where venture capital is when you go to the bank and mortgage your house. There's no venture capital in this country. It's just completely devoid. It's not like Silicon Valley where you can jump in a lift with Jeff Bezos, get your 20-second pitch and walk out with $10 million. It doesn't work that way here. Everyone wants security because the national pastime here is property investment. There's nothing more secure than bricks and mortar, except in Christchurch when there was a big earthquake. But they want total security. They don't understand that venture capital means high risk, high return. Potentially high return. They want everything to be ironclad, and the bank won't lend you a cent unless you've got a house to put up against it. And venture capitalists, the only time they'll give you money is if they can rape you at the back end. So yeah, cool.
Talking about money, that's money demonetized. Oh, Ian, you must have muted your mic, Ian. Yeah.
I was going to say we need a banner for the ladies and gentlemen. That was the demonetized shot.
Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. There it is. You'll get it in there somewhere. You'll get it in there. Yeah, it's interesting. Venture capital's not a big thing here as well. Maybe it's a Southern Hemisphere thing. Maybe we don't have it. But yeah, it's not a big thing here.
It's not huge in the UK either. But if you live in California, you pretty much just have to sort of write an A4 page and you get like 500,000. So it's if you want to start up a business, certainly California is a place to do it. But they keep investing in these things, so there's obviously money to be made in it. But I do wonder, whether it's all going to blow up into one massive big tech bubble and just explode.
The drone bubble, yeah. The drone bubble is what we're facing now, and there's a lot of companies I think that have had a lot of funding and they're not seeing returns on it. And I think we get that the dot drone crash after the dot drone boom, and that's why I think they're all shifting sideways into counter drone. We're not going to do drones, we're going to do anti drone. There must be money in that. Hey, British Telecom.
And I think that's going to be a really short-lived market because I think it'll be seen through. But Ian could be right; it could be just that protective box in the corner with the flashing light in which we trust. But it's not actually doing anything, but we all trust it. So that
we can all slate VC money, but if you look at a company like Skydio, how do you think Skydio are where they are right now? I can bet my bottom dollar that they've had several million pumped into them by VCs. I don't know what their investment change like, but.
And look where they are now. I was going to bring this up actually. Skydio, all this big press release, all this big noise, all this everyone going, oh, they're fantastic. We had Ian shilling for them down there in the corner. And do you look at I see now that pre-orders, the first batch sold out almost immediately, and the second batch sold out. Now they're on the third batch, which won't be delivered until the second quarter of 2020 because the damn things are selling faster than they can ever possibly make them. So that's what venture capital gets you.
They hid very well. They had all their tech. Well, I think
they hid it plain.
Kind of did what Bruce suggested. They brought the technology up to a certain point and released it with a little bit of a kapow. And I guess they had VC backing for that. But they're not going all out, are they? If you think about it, because it's a little release. They've sold it out onto the next thing. Yeah, maybe I'm defending a thing that's awful. I don't know, but
I took a lot of crap for my shilling this week when it was against it. I've had all of their fans having a go at me on my video. I don't think I was shilling. I think I ended up going against them because I got accused of calling them a flying GoPro, which I did. But
that's what they called the karma, wasn't it?
Yes, well, that was what I said.
You can't do that.
I think Skydio is an interesting one because obviously I don't know the money back in. NVIDIA are clearly heavily involved, as are is it Snapdragon off the top of my head, the chip maker. There's two very big companies. Oh no, Qualcomm. Pardon me, it's Qualcomm.
Right,
it's Qualcomm and NVIDIA. They're clearly putting a lot of backing behind it. Interestingly, Bruce mentions it actually, because on that side of it, it's been an interesting week because they've actually appeared to change a few specs in the middle of the week. They had said something, their customer services said something, and it was changed later in the week around altitude. And it's incredible that they're already pushing out until probably March next year. I think it's going to be now, isn't it? March, April next year. But as with all of these things, until it lands in people's hands, we won't really know how good it is. It is an extremely exciting. It's the first product I've been very excited about for a long time, and the reason for that is, and the reason, not the shilling, but my excitement on it is a step change, in my opinion, than anything we've had till now, and it's going to be interesting to see where they go with it. But on the flip side, they've set the bar very, very high. And if it doesn't deliver, they could be brought down in flames off the back of that as well. If the object system doesn't do what it should do, there's someone accosted me on the warranty and said it'll be covered for whatever happens. Actually, read those terms and conditions, folks. There is a lot of outs in those terms and conditions on their warranty. They'd be dull not to put them in there, but they are there. There are some altitude restrictions as well in place. It's not going to be the next best thing since sliced bread, but it's a very interesting product.
Well, is it going to be as interesting as this one? Is this a real product or is this made up? Mavic Mini, 7.6 volt battery, 5.5 to 8.4, 169 mils by 54, something like that. I'm probably not reading that right. Now this is doing the rounds today. Do we think this is real?
The problem is you never know, and that is the issue. Hand on heart, I know nothing on this one. I'm not surprised to see something coming this time of year. I wouldn't expect to see anything up against the Skydio. I'm not expecting to see the next, DJI's equivalent. I think everyone's jumping up and down saying, when are DJI going to come up with theirs? I'm not expecting to see that.
Simple answer to that, isn't it? As soon as they buy Skydio, that's the simple answer to that. And that surely is Skydio's plan, isn't it? Is to get into a bidding war from the various big companies that will just want to rip their hands off for it.
They should just sit back and license it. I mean, they're going to find out pretty quickly that manufacturing is it's a mug's game, because you've got support and you've got shipping and all that sort of stuff. The way to make real money, real return on your investment, is to come up with the IP, sit back and license it to anyone that wants it, and then you get money for jam. You've done the work and the money just gets rolling in virtually forever.
This is what they've got, is something no one else has got right now. That's what they've got, which allows their aircraft to fly closer, object avoid better than we've ever seen. If it does that, like the videos show it does, it will be a step change, but that will only be for 6 months. Let's not pretend this industry, every time there is something that's the next best thing, 6 months later, someone else is out it, someone else beats it. DJI are not going to sit there and just go, we're not going to do anything with that. The reality is you're going to see something from them, others. It is, in my mind, it isn't a out and out camera drone. And I took a bit of flack for this on the video I put out this week. I've said this is a flying action cam. For my opinion, that it's designed to follow you closely. Yes, it'll do fantastic pictures, but it isn't the same as having a unique H Plus with a 20 megapixel camera on the bottom, or a Mavic 2 Pro. They're different tools for different jobs at the end of the day. And this still isn't the perfect drone for everyone. I think something interesting is if you look at the range, 3 kilometers in FCC, when that comes to Europe, you are going to see that substantially less, usually about a third. So we could be talking less than 1 kilometer range in CE mode, because they'll be allowed about 28 dBm. Usually, I think it is in FCC, and it's at least 16 to 18 in EU. So we're going to be talking substantially less range with the remote controller, let alone the Wi-Fi side of it. So it isn't the magical answer to everything. I think it's got a lot of people excited like now, and including myself. I want to run through the woods and have this thing follow me, and I want to see if it
you bring us onto subjects that perhaps we should rather leave.
But no, but it is, you know. But on the flip side, there's actually 3 things that concern me with the Skydio. Number 1 is the battery. I have a huge concern over this battery on the bottom. It's magnetic.
Yeah.
There's part of me that we've got people who've managed to get batteries fall out of a Mavic that's clipped in the top with physical clips, and I don't know how that can happen.
We've done pretty well being able to do that. I'm not quite sure.
You know, it falls out of the top of an aircraft.
Have you seen them land?
How, you know, we now have a magnetic battery, and I watched the video with the guy holding it, and it come off really easy. I don't mean, you know, but he had gloves on, grabbed it, and it pulled it off. There's not special grips on it. There's not special places to put your fingers. It was just a grab and pull. We all saw what happened with the GoPro Karma. That battery was slotted into the back with latches, and it still fell out in flight. So I seriously hope this magnetic battery thing doesn't bite them. There's also a weird one on. Sorry.
What's interesting is that we kind of always heard this like blue sky vision. Everyone's going to have their own personal drone which follows them around and does things for them, etc. And it's kind of getting, you know, I've watched some videos online, and it's kind of very much getting to that point where you can pretty much go wherever you want, and this thing will follow you and it will stick with you. And, you know, at the moment it just takes video of you, but, you know, potentially in the future it could do all sorts of things. God knows what, but it's
interesting times. As for what Gary put up earlier, I don't know. I think we're going to have to wait and see.
It won't be long, is it? If it wants to get in the shots for Christmas.
It's usually when there's a leak, there's something behind it. That's the reality. We saw those casings, 6 months ago? It's good 6 months now, isn't it? Those casings were out that we saw.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And Mark's just asking in the comments, what about this? There it is, Hoverfly just awarded 10 million US. That happened this evening. A government contract for tethered drones.
They've reinvented the balloon. How fantastic is that?
He's not wrong, you know. He's not wrong. Live sky. I'd hate a dead sky. Yeah. Sold contract, initial ceiling value of 10 million in a 5-year period of performance. What to say? I mean, what can we say about it? What did you want to say about it, Mark? What are your thoughts? Put it in the comments and we'll try and respond. One
thing I was just going on i3connect.com and looking at Skydio. So basically the only investment they had was back in January of 2015, and they got seed money of $3 million back in January 2015.
That wouldn't have even paid the tooling, would it?
They had a pretty, again, I'll say it like I said to him last week, that the wing flying in the car park's extraordinary. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if they haven't got other ideas in the back of their mind. The quadcopter's nice, getting the word out there, getting the brand out there. But bring this precision landings, selecting size, shape, slope, surface for emergency landings, all that sort of thing. Be very useful in the fixed wing world.
Yeah, that were a pretty low risk investment because the guys themselves, usually venture capitalists, when they're going in when you want angel funding, they're investing in the people as much as the product. Yeah. And these people had good street cred, and they had that stuff. They could prove that they had the necessary skills and knowledge and ability to create a a product. So I think the initial investors were investing in those guys and hoping something would come out of it. And because they run very lean and mean, and they're probably not driving around in Porsches and Ferraris, and they don't have a fountain or a water feature in the lobby of their buildings, they're probably able to use that money to do the right things. And it's like they're investing their own sweat equity. They wouldn't be drawing down huge salaries during that initial period. And so that money was used very effectively. And then when they go out to get more money to take to commercialization, where you need to, get molds machined up and all that sort of stuff, the real cash comes in, you're in a much stronger position as the owner of the intellectual property to dictate a sensible price and to sell the very minimum of your stock holdings, so that when you finally exit later on, you've made a good, decent fortune out of it.
There's, if you look at the website, there's a lot of ads on there for an NVIDIA as well, and Qualcomm. So they're all obviously putting their bit in. And it is interesting what Bruce said about their IP, and Gary as well. The IP is where this is, and they are. These are good people. These guys certainly seem to know their stuff behind it. You would back them to produce a working product. It reminds me a little bit of Nest. When Nest parted from Apple, the guy behind it, it feels very much like that. There's some people behind this who are going to deliver something. The money's in fairly safe hands, isn't it?
It's Well, they're pretty much the darling of lots of people at the moment, aren't they?
Then again, I was going to say, on the flip side, 3DR, look how big they were, look how set up they were, and yet it failed. So as much as we can sit here and say it's the next best thing since sliced bread, the reality is the last biggest best thing since sliced bread, the Solo and 3DR, it did fail. But
that didn't arrive with the promised gimbal. I mean, they it didn't arrive as a complete thing.
No.
And
I think the problem is they almost had too much money. I think that's the problem. Probably. They had so much money, they kind of thought, well, we don't have to really worry because we've got enough money to last us like ages. And then they're like, oh, well, we can spend loads of money then. And then suddenly that, what was it, $100 million?
I was going to say it's 106, wasn't it, or something? I think it was 103, 106, something like that. I think.
Yeah, that's another phase that a lot of companies go through. If they get a lot of venture capital funding, the burn rate just goes through the roof because it can. I started up a business around just before the turn of the century. When I was running it myself, it had a burn rate of $2,000 US a month. That's how much money I had to keep putting into it to make it to keep it growing. When I took on venture capitalists and got sold half the business, the burn rate went up to $57,000 a month overnight for nothing. There was nothing really happened except they just put all the overheads up. It was like, if you want to spend money, there's really easy ways to do it. And the other thing is there's a sweet point in most companies' evolution where they're small, they're light, they're agile, they think on their feet. There's not a great lot of management infrastructure, so you can make a decision over a cup of coffee in the tea room. Once they get bigger and you've got all these other parties who have to have a say in what goes on, you have to have board meetings and things, the whole process slows down and you become mired in mud and you can't move quickly enough. So then you're vulnerable to the other little companies who are in that sweet spot again. They're small, smart. They can outmaneuver you in the market, come up with better ideas because you're mired down by having to report to all these investors and all these boards and all these things. And so you've really got to take advantage of being small for as long as you can. Otherwise, it is a burden, not an asset.
Yeah, I think as well with I think with 3DR as well, like I kind of got the feeling that they were hiring, like they felt that they had the expertise already in house, and so they didn't like with Skydio, they hire the top experts at what they're doing in the industry, and I kind of feel a little bit like 3DR sort of hired at a sort of mid to low level in terms of their sort of HR policy, and by doing so, they didn't bring in new talent with new creative ideas. They kind of it tended to sort of turn into it went a bit stagnant, and there wasn't any sort of fresh ideas coming in. It was kind of like top-down leadership, and I think it was a leadership problem more than anything else from what I saw from it.
Yeah, I think we can really go.
Fails, isn't it? Sorry, and it's surely any company that fails, it'll boil down to leadership one way or another.
You can rake over 3DR. there are hundreds of reasons. You know, I think we all agree the gimbal was fundamental on the release. There were some fantastic people working there. I also think it was an extremely political animal as well, in the sense of the whole Pilot and the whole complexities around the hardware and all of that. You know, it's still a complex animal even today. Pilot, PX4, all of that side of it. I think, you know, Skydio have come in. They're fresh. There's no politics in the sense of there's no expectations of a community pushing them one way or another. They have a product and they're going with it.
What Skydio sort of use as their base sort of Pilot. Anyway.
But it's not the Pilot team behind it, is it? And that's the, you know, no. Is it Pilot or PX4?
Pilot.
I'm
cough.
That's terrible. Yeah, that's. I think they are, and you know, I am genuinely excited to see this drone deliver. I want it to end up in people's hands and work like they've said it does. We've seen all of these Kickstarters and these damn projects that never deliver. There was the one down by me where I lived. You know, I can't remember what that one was called.
Yes.
You know, and it would be great if they can do something. It should be unique. It should be one of the others. You know, it's taken an outside company to come in and do something different, and I find that interesting as well. You know, I don't know what it means for the rest of them. That's a far more interesting subject in the sense of unique. They've got to be in serious trouble now. I would think Skydio have sold more aircraft in a week than Unique have in a year. I'd love to see the numbers.
There's a chance, yeah. There's a chance. I've heard that one of the counter cUAS companies is very close to, I'm not going to name any names, but is very close to the edge as well this week. And yeah, the industry, as we've said before, is shaking down. And the hoverfly thing, I'll come back to that now. That is interesting that was awarded to an American company, American stuff. You know, quite deliberately. So maybe it is the gap that the US manufacturers need, but they're always going to face the problem with ITAR. We've said that before as well. That's never ever going to go away.
Did you see what happened? There was a little bit cheeky from what BT did. Did you see that?
What
So I think BT partnered with a drone defense company.
Yes, we were speaking that about at the beginning. Yes, with whichever one it was. Yes, and their advert. Look how good we are, and we're gonna. Yeah, we have dissected that one a bit. And Christopher Jensen, any news in the heavy lift cargo space? Well, I can tell you that next Wednesday I'll be leading the keynote second day of a Durban. You know, I don't know really. I was supposed to have paid attention to what I'm actually doing, but I am leading the keynote, including the Flyox thing, which is the thing that can take a ton of cargo. Yeah, I'll be doing that next week.
I've just seen a comment on the YouTube thread just saying the issue with Skydio 2 is that you have to take up extreme sports.
Yeah,
yes. You know what this reminds me of a little bit is that Pokemon Go game.
Yes.
Where basically everyone goes and buys Pokemon Go and then ends up going out for loads of walks because they want to catch Pokemon. Yeah. And it's exactly the same with the Skydio 2. Everyone's going to be, you know, start up skiing and wakeboarding now because they want to fly their Skydio 2.
Yeah.
I'm into power sleeping. Power sleeping, that's the future action sport for me.
Yeah, it's interesting times. Let's hope when the November first product should be in people's hands. November, so we'll know more next month. They've also had frequently asked questions on their website. Worth checking them out if you've ordered one. Worth reading that warranty as well. There are some exclusions in there. So yeah, looking interesting.
It's interesting that chip manufacturers have invested obviously so heavily in this because it's not the only place they've done that. If we go back to the digital systems, digital FPV systems, I was looking at the Bifrost thing, and that's been supported quite heavily by analog devices, I think. And so I did a little bit of looking through the Analog Devices catalog, and the device which I'm pretty sure they'll be using to provide the RF link for this, because it's sort of one of the application notes says it's good for using for creating digital connections for analog camera systems. And it looks like just exactly the device I'll be using. I went on to mouser.com and priced it $217 per chip. And I'm thinking, no wonder you're not selling many of them. And this is a great way to expand your market and open up a new market for what is essentially a very expensive and probably very high margin piece of silicon. So there's a lot of payback for these manufacturers. If they can get a nascent market, if they can get it to take off, then that's where they get their money back.
I can actually, it's funny enough, on my shilling video for Skydio, Bruce, I also went a bit into, there's been quite a bit of, not misinformation, but the whole Bifrost thing isn't quite what it seems. And he caught me a little bit on that one as well until I dug into it. And I don't know, as you said, AD are behind the IP, but DiviMath are the company who've put it all into a package. And basically, DiviMath have created something called HD0, which is Bifrost. They created it in February this year. It's been out for 6 months, folks, and you could have bought it, but no one did. So it seems that they've partnered up with Fat Shark to produce this system, which is now labeled Bifrost. It's still very early days. The software is nowhere near finished. It's into beta now. You can pick it up, but there's some very interesting things about this. And the fact is, this is, even though Fat Shark have said they're not going to retain exclusivity, and it's going to become an open HD, it is not open. It is a closed proprietary system by AD and DiviMath. The only thing that is going to be open about this is the fact that other manufacturers can approach DiviMath and use it with their hardware. But it's been closed, it's closed source, and even so much that the camera is using analog HD. I think we discussed it last week, Bruce, but you can't just connect up an analog HD camera. There is an encryption chip that is required to allow it to communicate with the ear system. And if that encryption chip isn't there, then you will only get standard definition video. You won't get HD. So the way they've set this up is AD and DiviMath are preventing people from just making cameras to work from it because they want their cut of the cash and they want to retain their IP. So this is never going to be the analog of the digital FPV world. It is as closed and proprietary as the DJI system. It's the only difference is it might sell to more manufacturers.
That's true. It's a way of them protecting their investment, obviously. And as you say, that I think that will be actually quite a significant hurdle to its growth, because one of the things about existing FPV is you can mix and match and pick and choose, and that puts competition in the marketplace, and the prices are very competitive. I mean, you can buy an FPV system now for like, what is it? A good camera, reasonably good camera for like $30, and a video transmitter for like $20. So it's really, really cheap. And even if this digital system is 10 times better, unless it's price competitive, it's just not going to figure. And so because I started working on pretty much the same concept a long time ago, what was effectively an enhanced SD system using digital communication techniques. And there are a lot of hurdles involved, but I'm thinking of going back to it now and investing a bit more time in it, because the way they're doing it, I think they're just trying to keep it within the bandwidths that we're currently using for the sort of allocated FPV channels, which are really just sort of imaginary. And I think if we just go to a slightly wider bandwidth and say, if you want to run digital, then you can only run 4 instead of 8 at a time, but we can double the bandwidth. We can use some relatively simple modulation techniques and relatively low-cost chipsets, and we can do what Bifrost is doing and what DJI are doing in an open way. And there'll be some downsides. It won't be as slick as those solutions, but for the community that want to open source the thing, if you're willing to put up with a few of the little limitations, there will be some definite benefits there. And I'm quite happy to pioneer or champion an open source solution to that. And I think that's the way to go forward.
I think my problem with Bifrost, and I haven't seen it, I'll 100%, I haven't used it, haven't seen it. I'd love to get my hands on it to have a proper play. I've tested pretty much all of the digital FPV systems from HearLink all the way through. And my issue with it only brings one thing to the table. If you look at the DJI system, you can control the whole camera system and everything from the goggles. So not only is it digital, it records, you can change all your settings, there's more value than just a digital FPV link. You can change the camera profiles, you can set it to record stop. Bifrost is basically replicating analog. There is no two-way control between the ear end and the ground station. If you want to change a channel, you have to land the aircraft, plug a little cable in and adjust it, just like on many of the cameras. It'll be better. You know, what we're seeing today isn't going to be as good as the image quality is. I've seen some really weird image quality from it, frankly. It's looking nasty at this point. There's no other word to use. But it's beta. Let's pretend it's not fair to compare it to the DJI system. It doesn't look good, but it will get better. But they're trying to bring a digital system to replicate analog. And there's just no benefit to that. You may as well stay at analog. Unless you have all of that interaction, be able to change the camera settings, why would you not give you that option on the ground? It's so handy. If you're going to use digital, use it to the full benefit. You know.
Yeah, if you look at TBS with the new Fusion, is it? They've got,
yes,
and even with your standard like Betaflight and that, you can control, you know, with smart audio or whatever. You've got all those controls anyway that you won't have necessarily on the new system. And I'm looking at the sort of few beta videos that have been put up. The degradation is like terrible. It's like it's there 1 minute, and the next minute you've got this patchwork quilt of little coloured blocks. It doesn't degrade gracefully like the DJI system does, and that's one of the DJI's biggest strengths, is the fact that it degrades gracefully, so people can make choices as to whether they turn back or, you know, whatever. But with the Bifrost at the moment, it's either there or it's not, and if it's not, well, you're completely stuffed.
Yeah, it's early days. I'm sure they'll tune it better than it is. It is a bit of a mess when you look at it, but and actually, on the flip side, it should be fair to Fat Shark. They were very clear. This isn't for the average user right now. Do not buy this.
If you look at the receiver too, they got this box with 4 antennas. It's not something module you can stick in your goggles. It's not a goggle system, which makes it cumbersome. People don't want to have to set up a tripod and all that sort of stuff just to go and fly. They just want to be able to put something on their face and fly. And so that's another big downside for it. Now, don't see, given the amount of stuff that's involved, Fat Shark bringing out a module based on the system. It'll always be something else that you put on your back, or you nail to a tree or something. So that's another. There are a lot of downsides that they haven't really thought it through. Digital doesn't mean good. Digital means some bits are better, but you've got to have a package. You've got to sell a package, not just one thing.
It's what's interesting as well, you mentioned that the problem with all the goggles is that none of them have a HD input, and none of them even have an analog HD input. You know, even if they wanted to go down the road of using that analog HD from the module, because the issue we use in digital is the number of lines, so they're going to have to either put a whole new connector in the module bay, which is fully digital compliant. They haven't done that. It's not even in the HDOs. So what they're going to have to do is either create an analog HD input, but that means you're converting from analog to digital, to analog to digital again, and that's going to introduce latency, or they're going to have to put like a micro HDMI connector in the bay or something. But there's no goggles today that's going to take a module for this. There's nothing. So unless their native goggles are going to have it, you're going to always be ground station based. I don't know if it's fair to say this, but it feels rushed. It almost feels like DJI released and someone went, God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We've got this. This is fantastic. You know, if you remember that first image that came out on the quad frame, it's like, oh yeah, we got this as well. This is fantastic. This is going to be, everyone's going to love this. And I could be totally wrong and unfair to them saying that. However, it just feels that way. Okay, they're not going to have the money, the budget, the capability of DJI, but I don't know.
Yeah, and if you're going to have to buy new goggles to make it work, well, you might as well go buy DJI anyway, because if they get the analog side sorted out on their goggles, well, hell, I'll go and buy a set, because they're really brilliant. It's the best set of goggles I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Did you see that amazing piece of news come out last week? You know, your best friends, Gary, those amazing AI BV loss.
Yeah. What did they do?
So they got 10 million pounds worth of VC investment for their first ever BV loss drone company and AI software company
in the world.
Yeah,
in the world. Well, but they do other stuff as well. I see they make up stuff across industries. So I'm sure I'm sure they'll spend it very, very quickly. Let's just answer Christopher's comment. Thoughts already on the Alta X? The Alta X. I don't have any knowledge or thoughts on that. Anyone?
Oh, the Alta X, the big thing. I don't get it. Why would you want? Yeah, I just don't understand it. Why would you want an aircraft that can carry 100 grand payload with only 4 propellers?
That's right. We had this conversation, haven't we? I remember a couple of episodes ago. Yes, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah. I don't. It doesn't make any sense commercially to me. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, this news. I've just been contacted by someone who's got $4 billion to invest from Zimbabwe. What do you reckon, Gary?
We've got a box here. What are buyers?
Yeah, that's $4 billion Zimbabwe dollars. You'd be able to build something out of that, wouldn't you?
Do I need to send if I send my account details and like my PIN number and debit card number, will he transfer it across to me?
Only if you work for the CIA.
Yeah, you've got to work for the CIA in order for that to happen. The propeller I didn't pick up the propeller design. Anyone?
Yeah, right. They're using this like gyro on it to remove vibrations, and it tilts the propellers. They are also DJI propellers, which I also found extremely interesting as well. They're actually fitting DJI props onto their aircraft off the Agras, I think it is off the top of my head. But they've got this tilting mechanism, so as the motors go round, I'll have to pull it up to use the exact term. It looks very complicated for the benefit. I don't necessarily see it. I think it's probably done to reduce vibrations, because you've seen other manufacturers have problems with vibes on big airframes with big props. But it, again, why? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Keeps coming back to my mind.
That's the story of Bruce's life, isn't it? Really? I was going to ask you chaps, and you were going to talk about radios, so we can dive in that as well. What's this R9 conspiracy, trouble, issues? Why are people talking about having to upgrade radios and all sorts of other things? We don't know.
Me, that's all I was reading. What's this now? The Taranis. Are we talking about the what's the R9, Bruce? I can't remember.
The R9 is the FrSky long range system. It uses LoRa chips. I haven't actually followed this very closely, but I think it's something to do with if you want to use the new access protocol or something on the R9, you've got to have the 2019 version of your radio, because it won't work with the old one. And but I've fallen out of love with FrSky because of their desire to screw the customer and the number of dud products I've got here. And so, yeah, I haven't really followed it that closely. I've got R9 system here. I'm not going to upgrade it to Access. I'm going to use it as it is because it seems to work quite well. We should have had Nicola on, actually, because he's using the R9 system quite extensively. And so, yeah, it's
Yeah, my understanding, I watched a couple of videos. There's been a huge amount of chilling, as Gary said earlier, for new radios, especially the Jumper this week. I know I'm looking at this, I'm thinking I might need to order one of these myself. You've got one, have you, Bruce? Nice.
I do have one. Yeah. I don't even.
I think.
Did John have one as well?
It has blinky lights on the front. What
do you think of it, Bruce? Is it as good as a Taranis?
Yeah, this is a very early one, serial number 47 by the look of it.
Okay.
And I did have some issues with it early on, but that was basically due to the fact that it was a pre-production prototype, and now I can't turn it off. I've got some bits and pieces which I've put in there. They sent replacement pieces. Seems to be working. I've heard some people say there are issues with the software.
Yeah.
But as I say, I haven't updated it or anything yet. So when I do update it, I will do a follow-up. And yes. So, but yeah, it certainly seems to be. I don't much like the ergonomics, to be honest. I prefer the ergonomics of the Taranis. But I'm going to do a follow-up review fairly shortly. I'm going to do range test comparisons, all that sort of stuff, just to give people an idea of what I think. But it certainly seems to be good that FrSky has some competition, some real competition. And if this thing will keep working with my old FrSky gear, I'll keep using my old FrSky gear, and I'll buy third-party receivers and things because they seem to work better than the genuine ones now.
Yeah, it's interesting because the whole Access thing is, my understanding was that they've moved over to Access, which takes out all of the third-party module support and third-party receiver support, and everyone seems to feel that FR Sky are trying to go. It was the open side of their radio that got them to where they were, and everyone loved it. And now they're closing everything in, and they only want you to use their radios and their receivers, and they don't want you to have compatibility. You know, they've caused problems with which long range system is it? It's either
Crossfire.
yeah, they've had problems, and
Yeah.
they did something specifically that stopped it working. So you found a number of the YouTube channels this week have all come out and gone, you need to look at getting the jumper. And there's quite a lot of hoo-ha because the belief has been, the words that were put out were that FR Sky have been actively telling their dealers not to stock the other radio if you're stocking our gear. I've got a Taranis, and I have to say, I've dropped it more times than I can shake a stick at. I've broken more switches than I ever should have, but it just keeps working. It just keeps working. You put a new switch on it, it's away again. You know,
mine is one of the very original. I sent you pre-production unit, and I'm still using that transmitter. If the sticks are getting a bit worn, might have to put some new gimbals in it. But I haven't even updated the firmware. It's still got the original firmware. It's probably the oldest piece of firmware in the world. And it just, as I say, it keeps working. It just keeps working. It gives me better range than my QX7, which is a newer Free Sky radio. The QX7S is also quite a nice radio. But now they've gone like crazy, and they're making these Horus things, which they'll do everything but make coffee and clean the dishes. That sort of gone. They've lost their grasp on the market niche. And as I say, the big problem I've been having is quality control. I get so many dud receivers here. And so I'm just not buying Free Sky receivers anymore. I'm buying third party out of choice because they seem to work better and they seem to be more reliable. I've had fewer duds from non-Free Sky products than from Free Sky products, which is kind of crazy because when they launched the Access system, they're saying, we're introducing Access so that people won't be deceived by these counterfeit third party receivers. But those are the ones I want because those are the ones that work better. So please, and I did a video saying that Access is not to benefit consumers, it's to benefit Free Sky. And I'm not having a part of that. If they want to screw me into being closed system, then I'll say goodbye.
It's interesting, really, isn't it, to see it? Because I've not bought a receiver for probably 2 years. I bought about 10 before LBT kicked in, because obviously we had the change to listen before talking the EU. So I didn't update to that firmware. I held back, and I just bought a ton of receivers as it was coming in. So I didn't have to mess around it, because you can reprogram them, but it was just a pain in the bum. So I ordered about 10 receivers before that's the case. But I wouldn't know where to start now. I'll be honest, I'd probably end up spending half a day messing around if I bought a new receiver today. And it's a shame people are having to go through that pain now. You know, if
well, it opens up the door to computers.
Yeah, I've got the JR PCM 9X2, the original Taranis.
Yeah.
You know, somewhere.
Me too. I got one of those. Yeah.
And Wavy Davies, so's mine. I was running 35 megs as Wavy Davies still is, but yeah, that went by. But yeah, mine's also got the 35 megs in the back, and it's worked.
And they also said, and they did also say that OpenTX is coming to Jumper as well. That's the big thing that has caused a lot of them.
These jumpers you can select. They're like multi-protocol, aren't they? You can. Yes.
Yeah, the new jumper, there's a module you can put inside. Now, Joshua Bardwell put a video on it this week that gives you the multi-protocol module, which leaves the bay free on the back to allow you to put in a thing, long range or crossfire.
Well, it's interesting times, isn't it? Well, you know, there's your dominant player. I think we all thought FR Sky was going to be around for a long time, and this, that, and the other, and a couple of crazy business moves, and everyone's like, "Whoa, no way, man, we're out of here."
You know, I remember watching Bruce's. Sorry,
it's the evolution of business models. You know, you have the little guy, he's quick, agile, moves, satisfies the need of the consumer market. Gets big, gets slow, gets tired, thinks they know better than the consumer and starts dictating what the consumer wants. And that works for a little while, but that leaves the door open for some other new little startup to come in and do exactly the same again.
Yeah, I remember when Bruce reviewed the massive thing, and it was like, what is this? Why? You know, the Horus or whatever it was, and it was, it's a shame. It's a great radio. I will have to replace mine because I keep dropping it, and there's a stage where it's going to need to be replaced, and it'll be interesting to see what to go for, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess FreeSky have saturated the market. Every man and his dog, certainly in the mini quad market, is using FreeSky. And you've got to realize that as a company, because I think they're a public company in China now, they've got to keep showing growth and getting increased turnover and profits. And if you've saturated a market, if you own the market, well, where do you go from there? So that's why they're trying all these new products and trying to lock people in. I think they've taken the wrong turn. I think they should have stuck with the open source, because I actually said to FlySky, not FreeSky, but FlySky, years ago when they brought out the radio that eventually became the Hobby or the Turnigy 9X. I said to them, your software is crap, you guys. You guys should focus on making good hardware and then encourage people to write open source software for this thing. And that's basically what FreeSky ended up doing in the end. But FlySky never really followed that path. It was the open ER9X software for the Turnigy 9X, but they're still doing their own thing. And I think the thing that's really made one of the things that's made FreeSky so popular is that the OpenTX. It is just a brilliant piece of software. There's nothing you can't do with it except not crash.
And there are some complex things around OpenTX on the Taranis as well, because there is their version, isn't there? And then you've got the public version as well. I think probably Crossfire has given them a bit of trouble. I think, as you say, what's interesting is I bought one. I bought mine 3 years ago. My Taranis Plus. They've had one sale in 3 years, and then you've got all these guys spending money on modules every year or so to make their radio better, and they're not getting any benefit of that. And I'm guessing from a business point of view, they've looked at this and gone, we need to get more income from existing customer base. And how are we going to do that and force them down a proprietary road?
Yeah, that's why I think they brought out the Horus. They tried to take the upper end market that JR and Futaba have had for many, many years. I think some people have bought into that, but I know some of those who bought the Horus 10S are really peed off because they can't use the new 9R without upgrading to a newer radio. And they also brought out the little mini, like a PlayStation one. They've obviously been trying to fill niches or create new niches in the marketplace. Yeah. But I think they really need to go back to ground zero and say, what is it that the consumer actually wants? They should go out there and get focus groups and do what good companies do, and that is provide a solution that the market's looking for. It's much easier to sell heaters to Eskimos than deep freezers.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's be honest, we don't buy radios every year. No. The reality is your radio was always an investment. It always was your big investment. And changing system, when I changed away from Spectrum, it was huge for me. It's like everything changed when I moved to the Taranis. It was like, right.
Did you stop crashing? Did you stop flying out of range?
No. I just dropped the radio more. I never dropped my Spectrum once. The Taranis just falls over.
Look, time's getting on here, gentlemen. What else have we missed this week before we shuffle off?
Right, I'm going to have one rant about copters.
Okay. Copters?
That ad I saw 6 figures.
No, they basically claim that people were only earning 6 figures in this industry.
Only earning 6 figures. It's shocking. Now, I saw this and tweeted it.
I'll get out for those that haven't seen it. Yeah, it was.
Well, to be fair, there are people out there earning 6 figures. So, I'll give them credit where, there were more people earning
far less.
5, if not 4 figures. But yeah, I would say that six figures is attainable. If you're good at what you do, 6 figures is definitely attainable.
But okay, my point with it is it's this constant, and it's not specifically against copters. All the NQEs, they're all at it, trying to sell. Everyone needs to become a drone pilot ASAP.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's just and it was just, you think, really, you're gonna say you can earn up to 6 figures?
Does that include pence? Like the 6 figures, but there's a decimal.
So where is the decimal point exactly? Is it? Yeah.
And they're a big company, and the interesting thing with copters is they walk a fine line. Actually, I've watched a lot of their ads, and I've picked them up on 1 or 2. Not a company I've actually dealt with. Very good from my understanding, but they do a huge amount in counter UAS, and they also do a huge amount in UAS, and they're always balancing this seesaw back and forth between drones are bad, we sell drones. Drones are bad, we sell drones.
It's called $1 each way.
Yeah.
Or each way, yes. Well, there's a thing came out in well, one of the big American publications about the FAA surprised at how many drones are actually signing up, and isn't it amazing? Far 170% more than the actual forecast, which is absolute nonsense, and we all know that here. And I bet you there will be an article or two from the counter UAS divisions, probably one of the ones that seeded it, tomorrow or the day after, saying, look, 170% more drones out there. We need to be selling more systems. I guarantee it, tomorrow or the day after, that article will be out.
Yeah, we've killed 170% more people. Drones have. Than
Absolutely.
before.
Absolutely. We've had some terrible fatal aviation accidents down here this week. Some real it's the modern world, things are caught when, especially when you crash into housing estates, it's caught on CCTV, and horrible one. But yeah, I stopped your rant. Sorry, and you carry on with your rant.
That's it. I don't want to be against them. I just felt if you're going to advertise a service, promising or dragging people in with the promise of six figures, I just think it's a little disingenuous. That's all.
Hang on, what's James going to share it away, James? Or am I going to share it away? Add to the stream. Have I got to add it? There we are.
He's going to show us his bank balance.
I think, I wish. But in the negative though, I think. But yeah, no, like I think the problem is, I think copters do a great job, but like the problem is it screams of these kind of adverts, which how to make $1 million online in 2 minutes. Yeah. Like this is the kind of sort of feeling you're getting from this, and I completely understand where you're coming from, and I think it could, I think it's possible to earn that kind of money, like for sure. Well, for a business to turn over that kind of money, there's one thing a business turning over, 100,000 and you emptying 100,000 into your bank account, but certainly, it's doable. And I think it kind of screams of that sort of gold rush mentality where, unfortunately, it just sort of paints a bit of a sour picture. But it works. This kind of stuff works online. Everyone wants to be sold a dream. So,
it would have been they could have sold a dream of why not work for yourself and enter in a new emerging technology industry, or drones are the next biggest thing. And I just think when you start saying you could earn this, as you say, it just feels like, you see it on the back of cars, phone this number to win $50,000 a week or something like that, or and it just, I think at times it's a shame they have to resort to that kind of fishing, because that's what it is. It's fishing. They're trying to
A/B testing, isn't it? They'll try that this week, and next week they'll try a more realistic one, and they'll see what response they get to it. But
I'm never particularly popular with NQEs because I tend to always argue with them. At the end of the day, I can understand it's a race to the bottom. Prices have been plummeting in the UK on costs of training. We're sub 500 quid on a regular basis now.
Mr. MPW's free now, isn't he?
Yeah. You can get your ticket on YouTube. It is a race to the bottom, and they're pumping through between 3 and 5 people on each course. James, how many NQEs we got now? You got to know this.
About probably more than 100,000, probably. No, I think it's about 42 from last time I checked. But
so if we average, they're pumping out what, 10 a month each?
I think the problem is with these NQEs. They say training providers. I wouldn't really call them training providers. I would call them test moderators, because they don't actually train you to fly a drone. There is zero, there is a practical theory element of training, which I'll give them credit for that part. But in terms of actually learning to fly a drone and all the skills that you require to learn to fly a drone, it doesn't give you any of that. It basically puts you through a practical test, and they say, do this, do that, do the other. And so, are there many of these NQEs actually offering training to these pilots, to teach them how to fly, to teach them the kind of risks that they would see when they're on site, the kind of hazards, how to fly manually, what kind of emergency procedures you should be having going on in your head, like your eventualities of if something goes wrong, you should be doing this or this. There's nothing in the industry doing that. And well, this is something. Here's a very sneaky plug here, but I do, this is what I try and help people with doing is, I kind of saw a gap in the market there because no one's actually offering that kind of training, advanced training for flying in difficult locations. They're kind of putting people through okay, right, move the drone to the left, move the drone to the right. Yeah, you passed. That's not really helping people. And like when I was at my previous company, Plowman Craven, I used to when we had some people who didn't have their certificate of competency before they came in, and so I literally trained them from scratch. And yes, you could probably go out there to to an NQE and they could put together a course, but from my point of view, it's like, well, there's no expert out there doing that kind of thing. So I was just like, well, I might as well do it myself. So I just basically trained up all of our pilots in house, and then we'd stick them through the NQE at the end and get the certificate. But this is the problem, is that it's that they're sort of exam moderators, it feels a little bit, and they're not teaching people how to fly drones, how to collect data, how to perform an inspection, how to perform a survey. There's a lot of snake oil out there as well. I kind of feel is like people making so much money that they've got lots of time to create all of these courses to tell other people how to make loads of money. And if you're making loads of money as an operator, then you probably wouldn't have time to create the courses. That's kind of my opinion on it. You need to. I don't know. I could rant for I could rant all evening, but I just think that the quality of training at the moment in this industry is really poor. And I dare say there
are a couple of times. Hang on a minute. I'm going to launch my fleet in 5 years' time. There it goes. So it won't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No, I think rubbish. I don't buy everything's going to be automated. I think I was told 3 years ago that within 3 years everyone would be, there'd be no drone pilots left. And sorry, but I'll let those people stick with their ideas. And don't get me wrong, there will be an element of industry which will be flying drones autonomously. When Amazon eventually gets its deliveries up and running, then the only way that business model is going to work is if it is autonomous. So it's going to have to be. But you're talking about taking off from a known location, landing at a known location, and basically flying along some waypoints. That's not very difficult flying. When you're talking about 3D modeling a bridge or inspecting a rooftop, you can't automate that. I don't care how.
Skydio 2 out.
Well, yes.
Skydio 4 out.
This is the only thing which I think could potentially do something like that. You need to. You can't pre-plan those kind of flights because, Google Maps isn't good enough. You need to know the location of the property you're surveying, and when you're on site, it's difficult even flying it manually. You've got, if you have a tree nearby, to be able to go and capture the side of a building when you've got a tree next to it. Well, if it's right in front of it, it's almost impossible. But if you've got some gaps, you can potentially get some good data out of it. So it's it's really not as easy as I think people say so. And a lot of the people saying that there's not going to be drone pilots in 5 years' time are the people who've probably never flown a drone before. So yeah, I'll anyone wants to take a bet, £100 now, and I bet you there will still be drone pilots in 10 years' time.
Oh, well, that's no, but of course they will. Come on, the military's using stuff that will never be fully automated. Anyway, no. I
still reckon that there's going to be, even in 10 years' time, more than 20% of drones will be manually flown. I still think, because there's no point.
They'll be flown with people with not only the handling skills, well, perhaps perhaps only probably not only the handling skills, but they'll understand what data they're actually trying to derive from the flight and how they need to achieve that. And they're the skilled people. They're the ones that'll be making the six figures, as always will be. But I think there'll be plenty of autonomous inspections then. But there's always going to be a few, but not as many as the industry or AEVSI tells you.
Yeah, well, just, you know, I guess if only there was a course, a photogrammetry course out there which could, you know, teach you how to make hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If only. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's people are being sold a bit of a pup, really, with the big dream. But as has been mentioned in the comments, there's always industries or businesses that will be prepared to remove money from your wallet if you're willing to accept it. Sadly, it's the whole world, isn't it? Wherever you are. Now, gentlemen, it's getting very late again. What else have we missed before we go?
Can't think of anything.
Well, that's good then. So in that case, I'll say thank you, dear viewers, wherever you might be in the world. If you've joined us on Facebook, it was an experiment that seemed to work. So thank you very much for that. We look forward to it. We do this every Tuesday. Oh, go ahead, over.
There's one really important piece of news. Angus Benson Blair has got his PFCO.
Oh, very good. Very, very good. Really, that's a name that we see all the time. I mean, I guess we always thought he did. So there we are.
I think he used to be PFCO 63 apparently, or something like that. But God knows what happened to that. I won't ask any questions. But yeah, he's now 10,000. He's now he's almost up to. We're almost up to six figures. Maybe that's what it is.
It's the number on the license. Yeah,
we're talking PFCO numbers.
There we are. Then you'll earn your six figure. That must have been what it is. So on that bombshell, 2100 GMT every Tuesday, dear Facebook viewer, if this is the first time you've joined us. For everybody else, thank you very much. Have a lovely, safe week, whatever you're doing. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And hopefully we'll have someone from other companies next week when we're not doing the experimental stuff. So with that, adieu, farewell, goodbye. I need to colour that in differently. Take care, guys. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Oh, I've got to remember to press a button. Now, you don't know, Divya, but I press a button up here and then another button. They've moved it. It's not behind the camera.